What's the craziest crime you or somebody in your family has committed? Last year my psychotic mother burned down my childhood home that my dad, my niece, my sibling, and sibling's partner lived in because she believed my dad was cheating on her despite no evidence, and this was not the first time she accused my dad of cheating with no evidence. Effectively, she destroyed everything we had built and kept in that home, along with my dad's dog and my sister's cat. Cat was burned up, so never found, but the dog died of asphyxiation in my niece's room under her bed. Then after the fire, in what I can only construe as an act of desperation, she went to my bank and stole all of the money out of my accounts because she was secondary on the accounts I was working on changing banks, but my new bank had yet to finalize the creation of my new account. Moral of the story is take your parents off your bank accounts when you turn 18. She's now serving time in a county jail for the arson because she took a plea deal and got a reduced sentence, which I still believe was utter crap. She played the poor old lady act to the judge and he took pity on her that she did not deserve. This is a woman who eviscerated my self-esteem and made my life hell ever since I was born. She was toxic and abusive, never told me the truth about anything, and is a greedy, manipulative person. I feel no shame in saying that I do not care about her. She's lost any right to my love and respect. My cousin's husband got caught on a predator chaser's live stream trying to kidnap a 14-year-old boy. My father committed one of the first computer crimes in the 90s. A ton of files were corrupted due to a code he created because they fired him. FBI invaded our home and arrested him. Was sent to federal prison for 4 years, which was interesting because there was never a crime committed of its nature before. They made a forensics file episode about it. Edit, if anyone is curious, the company was Omega. My uncle used to dress up with a group of friends as D agents in the 80s and raid crack houses, only to take the drugs and consume them. Twin brothers boosted a car and robbed the 711 like 2 miles from house. Ditched car 10 houses from this. How were they caught? Officers respond to alarm triggered by Clark. Officer, got an alarm here, what happened? Clark, to Tom came in and robbed the store. Officer, how do you know it was these guys? Clark, they are 6'4" twins who come in every day. I know their shape and voice. The car 911 operator. 911, what is your emergency? Neighbor, was watching TV and 2 guys park a car in front of my house. One guy got out with like a Windex bottle and cleaned all the door handles and door areas. Then opened door and the other guy took the stuff and cleaned the inside areas. Then they ran off up the street. Dispatch, can you describe the 2 individuals? Neighbor, well, it was Tim and Tom, the twins that live up the street from me. They're like 6'4" and they are twins. My brother got completely inebriated one night and stupidly drove home. He woke up early in the morning to the sound of a baby crying. He looked around and noticed he didn't recognize the house. He quickly got up and walked outside to his car halfway in the driveway street and still running. Got in his car and drove away as quickly as he could. Turns out it was some random house about 5-10 minutes away from our actual house. He never knew whose house it was and never got caught. He also slowed down his drinking after that. My mom set a dude on fire. When I was young I had a babysitter named Chris. He was the uncle of my 2 best friends, sisters Abby and Becca. He was also abusive. He liked to do things to me in front of them, make them listen to my cry and scream. Nothing physical, I should mention. More psychological. Anyway, I didn't tell anyone about it, and in fact only learned this story about 2 years ago. But it turns out that my best friends did. They told my mom, and she was pissed. Soon after that there's a party at my friend's parents' house. My mom goes and sees Chris. He's all nice to her. They're outside in the backyard. She starts kinda joking around, roughhousing, messing with him. She grabs some lighter fluid and sprays some on him. Ha ha ha, just a joke. She lights a match. Ha, you wouldn't do it, would you? And she lights him on fire. According to my mom, he was put out quickly, so he was fine. But she told him that's what it's like when you're scared for your life. And then she left. Apparently he flew back to Florida the next day. Back in the mid-90s, I lived in a shared rented house in the north of England with 4 ex-schoolmates. It was a bit of a drugs den. right next to the bus station, so everyone called in on their way into town for a cup of tea and a spliff, and same again on the way out. So it was always rammed, lots of acid and mushrooms on weekends, people crashing everywhere. One morning, me and my girlfriend were woken up by the police coming into my bedroom room illegally. They claimed to have pushed the door, and it swung open, and telling us all to gather in the front room. I had my skinning up box next to the bed. I assumed the police were there for drugs or course, so I hid my stash before I came down. So we are all sat in the lounge hungover and that, and the policeman says, so, who knows about the credit card? We all just went wah, because it wasn't what we were expecting, except one of my housemates stands up and says no one else knows anything, it's me, and goes off with the police. Turns out, a bank card had been delivered for a previous tenant, and then shortly after a new PIN. My housemate had taken it and emptied the account of a load of cash. And what had he bought with his stolen cash? A gecko in a big fancy glass cabinet. He was struggling to pay his rent, we all were, but here was this massive green mother sat sunning itself in our front room. All 6 or so of us just sat and looked at it as he was taken away. My wife's cousin was arrested for the manufacturing of meth 3 times and was sentenced to life. His mom and dad all cooked MTH and supplied basically the entire area. The worst part is that during his last arrest he was taking the fall for his parents. They were in large part why our small sleazy little trash heap of a town was one of the top 5 for MTH in the United States at the time. My parents' horse got loose and somebody hit and killed it. The horse disposal people wanted some relatively reasonable amount of money to come pick up the carcass, but my parents were like, fuck that. Hey, you Hendigal, load that acid up on the flatbed and find somewhere to dump it. Me, okay, sure, pops. Call Stoner friend. Me, hey, want to go dump a horse somewhere? Stoner friend, sure. I have nachos. Me, cool. Stoner friend, cool. So Stoner friend and I got even more stoned than usual and took my parents' flatbed truck out and tried to winch the horse up onto it. Turns out you really can't winch a dead horse onto a flatbed. It's not the winching that's the problem so much as the 5-foot lift up to the edge. We fucked up a lot of that horse trying, though. Attempt #2, we went home and built a big ass ramp out of plywood and 4x4s. It took most of a day and half a dime bag of W addition. We argued a lot about whether or not we should bevel the part of the 4x4s that touched the ground. Final decision, neither of us knew how to do that, so we opted for no bevel. Back at the horse, we wrapped the winch line around the head this time. Fun fact, steel cable looped around a horse head in a slipknot arrangement is a good way to reenact a famous scene from The Godfather. We didn't quite decapitate Mr. Gooseberry Long, may he gallop in the heavenly fields. But it wasn't pretty. Nothing about a dead horse is pretty, but that bit in particular was remarkably not pretty. We decided to go with our original idea, lash the front hooves together with rope. Small problem, we'd cut the rope at some point. Neither of us could remember why or who did it, but nothing for it. We had to go home. Finding more rope required smoking half a joint, which I think is quite reasonable given the task we were set to. Back at the horse again. Our engineering marvel worked. We had some initial worry that we would pull one or both of the horse's forelegs out of its socket, but apparently dead horse sinew has quite a bit of tensile strength. We used T-down straps to lash the horse and ramp to the flatbed, initiating a discussion about why we hadn't used those in place of rope, leading to an argument over whether or not that would have worked, leading to an awkward hostile silence as we drove around the ass end of South Dakota looking for a place where we could dump a dead horse. I'm sure there were many places one could dump a dead horse in the middle of rural South Dakota. Strangely enough, though, we were both feeling a little paranoid. Every car that passed us was a plainclothes cop car. Every person standing out in their field was heading straight to their house to report us as soon as we went around the bend. Finally, we found a field in the Black Hills National Forest that looked like a good spot. It had trees, which we thought the horse would like, and there was a nice parking area next to a snowmobile trailhead. Goose had never liked snowmobiles, so the idea of his skeletal carcass scaring the acid out of some ski-doer coming off the trail seemed like something that would have appealed to the old fella. We backed the truck a little ways into the ferns next to the trail. Then we used a come along to pull the dead horse off the flatbed. About a mile into the way home, stoner friend said, "Does your horse have tattoos?" I was like, "It's a horse, not a Ref King Chief Petty Officer in the Merchant Marine. Why would it have F King tattoos?" Well, apparently some horses have tattoos, according to stoner friend. It's how they identify them if they are stolen. Note, subsequent research revealed that this was usually only something done with thoroughbreds, which our horse was definitely not. Back at the horse again. "I think they put them on the lip, inside," says stoner friend. Have you ever pulled back the lip of a dead horse to look for tattoos? Worse, never have I ever. There were no tattoos. But then stoner friend says it's probably one of those tattoos that only lights up under UV. By then, most of the W-Ed had worn off, but there was that tiny bit of paranoia still holding on for dear life. What if there's a UV light lip tattoo on your horse, you hendigal? They're going to catch you for sure. So there I was, in the early South Dakota summer evening, cutting the lips off of a day old dead horse with a dull pocket knife. Bonus, we just threw the lips into the woods a little ways because nobody's going to go looking for horse lips in the woods. Stoner friend. And that's how illegally dumping an animal carcass on federal property is the craziest crime I or anybody in my family have ever committed.